So today we're going to take another inexpensive mini and make it into something pretty special. We are going to make Tiamat. The cheapest Tiamat I found online was around 50 bucks, and most expensive was around 100. This one I got from Michael's with a coupon for 10 bucks and change. So I don't think you can beat that. So we're going to make a fun base for it, and we're going to do a little bit of creativity to make this Hydra look like Tiamat. So let's get started. So we're going to start off by spray painting the entire model in black spray paint. This is some cheapo stuff I got from Home Depot. Now you notice I have it on the stand. I don't keep it on there because it didn't stick very well. So what I ended up doing was working on either the front half of the model or the back half of the model, depending on what was dry. I covered the majority of the body in this terracotta. I thought that would be kind of a cool color to use since it's different from all the other heads, but it's still sort of in that sort of like red family. And considering she lives in hell, I thought that would be perfect. Now, one of the drawbacks of cheap paint you can see here is sometimes it just doesn't cover that well. But it's a small price to pay to do a couple of coats, and it still comes out pretty well. Here I'm putting in the red inside each mouth. I always paint from the inside out, and that's because usually the stuff that's at the deepest layer or the furthest in is the hardest to get to without messing up further layers. So I'm doing the red here for the mouth because that's going to be an easy way to mess up later. I'm not going to do the teeth though, because I'm pretty sure what will happen is I'll probably get some paint from the outside stuff that I'm going to be doing on those. So I'm going to fix those last, and that'll hide a lot of sins because it'll keep the transition from the red mouth bits to the outside looking great. And after I do all the mouths, I'm going to base coat each one of the heads. Now for the red dragon, I basically do a bright red base, and I cover the entire thing. In hindsight, I didn't have to do the inside under part of the neck where there's scales because I'm going to do those in a different color anyway. But here I'm doing the white dragon, and I'm base coating this in a sky blue because what I want to do is dry brush on white on top of it so the scales look like they have sort of this blue iciness underneath them. And here's a blue dragon I'm doing in this navy blue. Now I didn't do a base coat for the black because it was already base coated in black. I did the green head in a base coat of like a forest green, and here I am actually highlighting it with a dry brush of apple tart. And you'll notice I masking taped off the adjacent heads, and I'm really glad I did this because it kept cross-contamination of all my different paint colors. So yeah, it's a little bit more of a pain. Like you have to wait for everything completely dry because you don't want to put the masking tape on while anything is wet because you'll just peel off all the paint. And you can see here I dry brushed on the white onto the white dragon head. I think it came out great. So here I'm doing a wash of a highlight of green. I figure this guy spits acid. Why not put a little bit of a wash of green on him? That would be fun. And I'm doing this before I dry brush on any accents because that way, sometimes when you do a very bright colored wash, you can see sort of like it looks like it's almost stained, like it'll have rings around it where the water dried. So I'd like to do the wash on here first, let that completely dry, and then I dry brush over it to hide any of those rings. So here I'm dry brushing over it after that wash is completely dry. And this is a gray with a little bit more black in it to sort of darken up that gray. And I liked how this came out. It came out very detailed and textured and with a hint of that green. So now it's time to take off some of these masking taped areas to kind of take a look at everything. And I also end up doing a dark blue wash on the blue dragon. It's hard to kind of tell there, but and then I did a little dry brushing of sky blue on that blue dragon as well. Here I'm getting ready to do a burgundy wash on the red dragon head, and just to be safe, I'm covering up the other heads because I want to make sure that I don't get any of that wash on the other heads. And this is just burgundy. It's like a Bordeaux red with a water to taste, and by that I mean until it looks like it's runny enough to put onto your model. And after that was completely dry, I dry brushed on some burnt orange. I really wanted to make this red dragon head look dry and burnt out and hot. So I liked how this burnt orange came out on top of it. I think it's a really cool effect. And just to add even a little bit more detail, I took a very light bit of orange on top of the head there to really make those ridges stick out and pop. And once that was done, it was time to reveal all the heads, because now I wanted to do the brown for the belly part and for the front of all the necks. You can see here all the different skin textures for the scales are all done. So here I'm starting with a golden brown on the belly, kind of touching up and making it look a little bit better. And adding a couple more coats because it took a while to actually get that stuff to stick down there. And I'm going to pull this brown, this golden brown, up into the scales on each one of the necks after I'm done doing the belly. Gotta be really careful here because there's a lot of things to hit, so I went slow and steady with this and used a good sharp brush to make sure that I had a nice transition and clean line between those scales and the rest of the scales on the neck of each one of the heads. So then I thought it'd be nice because there's so much terracotta on that body that I really wanted to break it up. I wanted to really show a lot of the definition. So I tried something on the bottom of one of the wings. And I do this a lot. Like I'll try something on a model on a piece of it that you won't be able to see when it's done. What I basically did was here I took and put a very small amount of paint on the brush and then almost like flat, using the flat side of the brush, I just skimmed it across the ribbing of each one of those wing segments and that dorsal fin. And I think it came out really cool. It made it look like there was this black bone running through each one. So I figured I'd continue that kind of motif down into the body here because I saw there were sort of similar ridges everywhere. And then I also did it onto the bones that are sticking out from the body. And I think this was a good place to start. Now what I would do later is I started doing a gradation of that black, doing dark at the base of each one of these fins, and then sort of having it get lighter and lighter towards the outside of each one of these fin pieces. And I also decided, hey, let me just do the claws while I'm here. I have full strength black, might as well try it. So here I'm doing these scales on the spine. I'm doing these in a solid black because I'm going to do an accent of copper later on, which is going to look really cool. And once I'm finished painting all these scales in the spine, I go back to those dorsal fin sections there, and I water down the black and start transitioning that solid black into sort of a gradation of black onto each one of those fins. Here I'm just doing some more dry brushing on those areas where those little bits are poking out. And starting to do that gradation I was talking about. Dark on the bottom and lighter as you go up those fins. And now that I've done it the dry way, I'm going to try to do it with wet. Wet basically covers more paint, and especially with wet black paint, it really covers. So you can do this sparingly. You can see here I'm kind of trying to not do too much of it. So I kind of put a very watery layer on the dark, what is going to be the darkest part of my black area. And then I wet my brush again, and then I pull that up using that very wet brush, just with water. I pull that black up onto that dorsal fin to get more of a gradation from almost completely black on the bottom to almost completely terracotta on the top. And I do the same thing on that ridge of shells going all the way down the spine. So you get this nice gradation between black and that terracotta. Then I did the wash of this burgundy red. I figured I wanted to tie in that brown on the belly with the terracotta on the body a little bit more. So I put it on both parts of it, and it sort of ties that brown and the terracotta together really, really well. And I did the same thing. I put that burgundy wash on the scale parts with the brown on the front of each neck. And I really like how that came out too. And it also keeps it in that red family. Like I like that this ties in all the different heads to that terracotta body. So here I'm dry brushing on a copper. And I love how this looks. It looks really cool. It almost looks like it's glowing. And I know this is technically not a metallic dragon, but you know what? This is my Tiamat. I can do what I want. And once I had the full strength copper where I wanted, I ended up adding a little bit of khaki to that copper and dry brushing that onto the belly as well. So yeah, so here I also put some khaki on the body because I was trying to do anything I could to sort of break up all that terracotta and give it a little bit more definition, a little bit more life. And here's how it looks when we're all done with everything except the final dark wash. So here's the final black wash. It's actually not totally black. It's black and brown and a lot of water. And I use this to sort of tie everything together and kind of mute a lot of those colors a little bit. I tend to like muted more than very, very bright. I find it, I try to stay away from a cartoony kind of look like that. But it also seems to tie everything together. It hides a lot of little seams between different paint colors. Yeah, it just brings the whole model together really well. And once that was thoroughly dry, I was trying to do the little details, which were basically just the teeth and the eyes. And so here I'm using a little bit of ivory, very little paint on the brush, and a nice sharp edge on that brush. And I'm just gently stroking it across the teeth and just letting the teeth grab whatever paint they want. It was time to paint the eyes. Now, I'm never good at eyes. A lot of painting eyes, a lot of being good at painting eyes is finding the right mixture and thinness to the paint. If it's too thick, it'll just sort of glob onto the surface and won't actually fill in all the crevices. And if it's too thin, it'll only fill in the crevices. And you'll notice on, I think, my red dragon and my black dragon, the paint was too thin when I did them, so it only went in the crevices. So I ended up fixing them later, and I'll show you how I did that. So here I am fixing the red, one of the red dragon eyes. And I did this after the green in the eye was completely dried. And I just took the mid-tone color I had used for the dragon and painted that around the eyelid to hide any of the overflow from the green paint. Okay, so then it was time to start on the base. And this is basically a piece of plastic that I got from my wife. She had gotten it in a frozen food container or something, but you can just use cardboard. I just used it because I had it. So I put a generous amount of hot glue on there and then one sheet of the Dollar Tree foam board that I had peeled the paper off of both sides of and just got that nice and glued together, and that made for a pretty firm base. And then I had some pink foam pieces laying around from another build I did. I just kind of rough fit them in. My idea was basically I wanted to have Tiamat sitting on this ridge of rock and gold. I thought this would be good because it'll make her look sort of ominous and imposing, but it'll also hide the fact that this particular model that I was trying to make in a Tiamat doesn't have hind legs. So I figured this way it'll be less noticeable that she doesn't have hind legs, and it'll make her look really cool too. So once I had those pieces in rough place, I kind of rough cut them into kind of rock-like shapes with my scissors. Just kind of big, rough shapes. I didn't spend too much time on this. And once I had that done, I put them back onto my base, made sure they looked right and fit well with where her feet were. And then I traced out roughly where each piece of foam was with a Sharpie so I could take them off and then glue them in place. And once that had dried, I traced out a nice shape for the base, or a nice kind of roundish shape, and cut out the base with some scissors. Then I use my utility knife to start carving those rocks and making them look more rock-like. I also like stabbing the foam with the utility knife blade and twisting it. You get some nice kind of random patterns in there that way that look very rock-like. And after I was done with this, I took my hot glue gun with no glue on the end. I actually wiped off all the glue, and I used this to create what were going to become lava channels in the rock. It's a really easy way to do that. It basically melts the foam pretty well and gives it a very craggly look. And so I did this all over the base. And yeah, so I got these nice little lava channels going in the base. Then after that was done, I took my handy dandy tinfoil ball and texturized everything with it, all pieces of foam, except for the lava channels, which I wanted to kind of keep that natural melted look. But I did actually add gravel to those channels a little later, as you'll see, to give them a little bit more texture. Now, I originally did this paint in gray. This is a 50-50 mix of paint and glue with some water to thin it out. And then I started realizing, you know what, I want to have this black. I want these rocks to start out pretty darn dark because this is a pretty ominous scene. So I actually went over it again in black paint, and I'm glad I did. And once this was dry, I started doing my lava channels. Now, the thing I usually do with lavas and oozes and anything I want to make look like it's glowing or hot, I reverse the order of my colors. I do brightest colors on the bottom and darkest colors on top. So the brightest color here I'm using for the lava is the yellow. And once I get this all painted in all the channels, I will add some gravel to this paint while it's still wet to give it a little bit more texture. So those gravel pieces will grab the colors that I dry brush on top afterwards. Well, I may have forgotten to hit record, or it may have run out of batteries, but I do not have video of the rest of the build of the base for Tiamat, so I'll just have to walk you through it. Sorry about that. But anyway, so let's take a look at the model. Okay, so here is the base, and you can see it looks a lot different than where we left off, which was basically just painted black with some yellow rivers of lava being started. After that, what I did was I worked on the lava flows by you saw that I put the gravel in there, and so I painted that with a dry brush of red and then a dry brush of orange. So I sort of build it up from the bottom. So the bottommost layer is yellow, and then followed by orange, and then followed by red, and then a little bit of orange on top of that. Once that was dry, I dry brushed the rocks with a gray to give them some more definition. And once that was dry, I took one of my favorite products, the realistic water product, and I put that into all the pools to kind of make them look a little bit more wet. And after all that was done, I took full strength Elmer's glue and put that where I thought there should be gold and jewelry, and I sprinkled that on. And yeah, so you can see that's right there. And then after that, I was pretty much ready to put Tiamat down. And in fact, I'm looking at this right now, and I just noticed that I actually want to put on some more gold right there, and I'll do that after this. But that's pretty much it. Sorry for the lack of actual building video for that, but yeah, well, this is the best I can do right now. Hope you guys are enjoying it, and we'll get back to it. So once the base was completely dry and I had gold on there and jewels and all that good stuff, it was time to hot glue Tiamat onto her final position. I was very generous with the hot glue here because I knew what I could do later is hide it with more sprinkling of that gold fleck. By the way, I'll leave links to all these different things that I used in the description and on GameGearMaster.com. Yeah, so here I'm sprinkling more of that gold fleck on. It hides a lot of sins and hides a lot of that hot glue. That's kind of it. And then I did the other leg. Hot glued that down, added a little bit more gold to hide the hot glue. And we have a Tiamat on top of her throne of gold lava in the pits of hell. So I hope you enjoyed this build. I really enjoyed making this, and I can't wait to use it at my table. So thanks again. Till next time. Please like and subscribe and hit that bell icon to be notified of new videos. As my thank you for your support, I've also put some free downloads for you at GameGearMaster.com, including a free PDF that lays out the details on the different Terraino building blocks. And I'll be posting more free stuff there, as well as Game Gear, D&D adventures, and other stuff you can buy to support these free videos. So thanks again.